sa afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
The world's leading minds in public procurement are coming together, set against the vibrant backdrop of Manila. Welcome to the 2025 East Asia and the Pacific International Public Procurement Conference. Hear from experts at the forefront of public procurement innovation. Join us from April 28 to 30, 2025 at the Hilton Hotel Manila for the procurement event set for the people, bridging innovation, value for money, and accountability. Brought to you by Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office and the World Bank in partnership with Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and Climate Support Facility.
Hello everyone, this is your host Ruby and welcome to TSO Talks. In today's episode, we will be talking to graduates of the Public Procurement Specialist Certification course, and they will be sharing their experiences, the challenges they encountered, and how the course has shaped their professional journeys. I've been involved.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How was lunch? Good? Yes. All the energy's in the tummy. A little sleepy. There's coffee outside, ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know. And, well, thank you for being here. Before we move on to panel number 2, we just have a short message from the Honorable DBM Secretary and GPPB Chairperson, Amenah Pangandaman. Let's watch this video.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of the Philippine Department of Budget and Management, I warmly welcome all participants to the East Asia and the Pacific International Public Procurement Conference. We are excited to host this year's conference, which serves as a vital platform for cooperation, knowledge sharing, and innovation to build transparent, inclusive, and efficient and sustainable procurement systems across the region. This event underscores the need for procurement systems that deliver beyond contracts, focusing on creating measurable impacts for communities. This is aligned with the Philippine President Ferdinand Bongbong R. Marcos Jr.'s commitment to transformative governance. It calls for bridging innovative approaches, fiscal responsibility, and transparent governance, ensuring that procurement decisions respond to the diverse needs of our respective societies. By coming together and actively engaging in meaningful dialogues, we will harness the potential of procurement as an enabling tool for sustainable development. We will be able to share transformative solutions, empower the marginalized sectors, and bridge global and local priorities, the keys to addressing the critical challenges of our time. On our part, I am happy to note that the Philippines, under this administration, has made major strides in procurement, especially with the signing and implementation of the new Government Procurement Act, which we see as the biggest anti-corruption measure in our country's recent history. This law introduces innovative measures that promote greater efficiency, inclusivity, transparency, and faster delivery of projects and purchase of goods and supplies critical to respond to the needs of the people. And as we shape public procurements in the region, I encourage all of you to take the time to experience our warm hospitality and the rich culture of the Philippines. Again, to all participants, welcome to the Philippines. May we have a meaningful and productive conference. Maraming salamat at mabuhay.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Pangandaman. Are you ready for the second panel? Yes? Cool. So it's I could hear Howard from a mile away. This is going to be called, has not begun, Procurement for Generation Beta, delivering value for the future. So this session, ladies and gentlemen, looks at value for money beyond cost, focusing on outcomes that matter to the next generation. Let's welcome our moderator, my new friend, Mr. Howard Centenary from the World Bank, to guide us through this important talk. Round of applause, please, for Howard Centenary. Howard, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you all back. Unfortunately, we are coming after lunch, so we are counting on the panel to keep us all awake and energized, and we'll do our best with that. We have a panel that will be talking about Generation Beta, and when we discussed this, I initially thought maybe we should have one representative of Generation Beta, and it turns out, well, those are guys who are born today and onwards, so it wasn't quite practical to have them. So we'll see if we can really discuss thinking about their needs. So really welcome to what we hope will be an exciting panel discussion. And we had a lot this morning about how procurement is now increasingly being assessed against societal outcomes, long-term societal outcomes, which is where Generation Beta comes in. So those who are born from 2025 onwards. So we are living in a time where public procurement is no longer just about cost efficiency. I think we had quite a bit this morning about really long-term value that we deliver. And we also had about evaluating procurement against long-term societal outcomes. So it's really about value that aligns with evolving societal expectations, global sustainability goals, and crucially, the needs of future generations. So Generation Beta, those born from around 2025 onwards, they'll grow up in a world shaped by the decisions that we make today. So the real question that we must ask, and which we hope that the panel will answer today, is, are our procurement systems ready to deliver value to this generation? So today's panel brings together no one from Generation Beta, but definitely thought leaders, change makers from across the region and the globe to really explore how to embed strategies for sustainability, economic opportunity, and transforming procurement into a lever for intergenerational value. And with that, I'd like to invite the panel forward. And from Singapore, we have Ms. 𝗘𝘀𝘁, the Deputy Director of the Government Procurement Function in the Ministry of Finance. And from Tuvalu, we have Ms. 𝗘𝘀𝘁, the Director of Central Procurement Unit in the Ministry of Finance, representing the perspectives of the small island states. And from the Philippines, we have my good friend, Attorney Dennis Santiago, Managing Director, Banco Central ng Pilipinas, joining us to share his long experience in procurement transformation efforts in the Philippines. And on the professionalization front, we have Mr. Charlie Villaseñor, the Chairman of Procurement and Supply Institute of Asia, a key voice for professionalization in the region. And representing the multilateral development banks, we have Mr. 𝗘𝘀𝘁, the global lead in project procurement and financial management division, bringing the perspectives of the MDBs. So thank you all, and we'll start the discussion now. We will organize this into a thematic discussion, really having two rounds. One will look at redefining the value for the future. Then we'll look at jobs, economic opportunity for future generations. And then we'll close off with the systems and culture shift that is needed. So starting off in round one, to you, 𝗘𝘀𝘁 from Singapore. I think what we've seen from Singapore is you have long focused on value beyond price. So for you, value beyond price is not something new. Could you just give us your experience from the side of Singapore about how you have managed over the years to embed value beyond price, looking at innovation, digital agility, and long-term outcomes that matter for future generations?
Thanks, Howard. Hi, everyone. I'm 𝗘𝘀𝘁 from the Singapore government, part of the Government Procurement Function Office, where we actually set the policies for all our government agencies in general. So maybe just to set a little bit of context, in Singapore, we've always seen government procurement as a means to just buy what the government needs. We are spending taxpayers' money to get what we need, and so it's always what we are buying that is the first primary thing that we're focusing on. Then in how we buy and what we look at, we've always actually believed in the tenet of value for money. And for us, from the start actually, ever since the procurement function was set up, value was always defined as, you know, combination. It could be everything from quality to inclusive of, you know, achieving economic outcomes, societal outcomes, or sustainability outcomes. So to us, awarding contracts based on lowest price has never been the favored approach. We've always actually mandated our agencies to, as far as possible, consider quality, consider other outcomes. So that is actually, you know, the starting premise of how the Singapore government procurement framework is actually structured as. So of course, but for maybe generation beta, even before we talk about, you know, how you decide which contract to award in, one of the things we also advocate is for government agencies, right? So please think through, do you need to buy? For instance, maybe the concept is that I don't need to buy, or I should structure my requirements in such a way that maybe it's not a buy, maybe it's a grant, or maybe it's I structure a service in such a manner that there's no need. So we actually talk about, you know, procurement working with the business owners or the policy decision makers to first decide, is there a necessity to buy? And if we are buying, what are we buying? Once you have that planning in place, then you think about, you know, what type of criteria, what type of other outcomes that you want to achieve to define the value of this procurement. So as an example, in Singapore, I think something that is quite well known. In Singapore, we've actually structured our tax collection as no service. Meaning to say that if you're part of an employee, part of an organization has registered that submits all your income-related information directly with our data network, there's actually no need for anyone to file taxes. Only those people with extra claims, or, you know, who have special needs or have extra claimable deductions may want to go into the system to input in those deductions. But actually, no service is actually what we strive for, and our systems were actually designed to facilitate that. So this is an example of how, you know, in coming years, we would see maybe Generation Beta being even more interested in, oh, if you can just do everything for me without me even having to intervene any step, that's maybe the first thing we would do. So this is something that, you know, something for all of us to consider. Maybe procurement is not about buying, it's about structuring the good that you're buying so that you can achieve maximum value for the stakeholder, even before you talk about the procurement itself. But of course, when doing the procurement, you know, how do we actually, you know, embed, maybe let's say, for instance, innovation? So just as an example, for us, we've actually an in-house rule that we strongly recommend all agencies to consider innovation as one of the sub-criteria when we evaluate for quality. So, you know, we advocate agencies that unless you are very sure you are looking for a very specific good with very specific requirements and therefore you specify everything, we recommend our agencies to do outcome-based contracting, which means that you actually state maybe your problem statement and the outcome that you want to achieve. Let the suppliers, let the market come back and tell you what they can offer to you to help you. And that's when you actually bring innovation to the forefront, because the suppliers themselves can propose that innovation to you. And if they have innovative proposals, it's actually both for the good of your organization as well as for them, because it gives them a chance to demonstrate that their solutions are actually workable. And in fact, that helps to drive economic development, because, you know, you become the test bed for new innovative solutions that they have previously maybe no chance to deploy at a higher, a more expensive level to, you know, to demonstrate that they are scalable, that they can be adapted in other situations. So one example was, you know, there was a construction tender that I was involved in in my other job previously, where, you know, a tenderer actually proposed, instead of normal, you know, cut and cover type of construction where you just dig up the ground and then you just build, a supplier actually gave a very innovative approach of deep freezing the soil and actually to do excavation, which was actually more productive. Of course, it came at slightly higher cost, but it was definitely an innovation that in the overall scheme of things and in terms of time taken, it was actually an innovation that was for the better good of the contract. And this actually was something that, you know, this came up by the fact that the agency did not specify how the construction was to be done. They just said, I needed you to build this, and as part of the work, you will need to, you know, get all this soil out of the way first. So these are ideas of how we could embed, how we embedded, you know, that call for innovation to our suppliers to also propose some innovation as well. Social impact. In Singapore, I think our context is a little bit different. Maybe for one of our key maybe social outcomes that we're looking beyond sustainability is actually maybe, you know, uplifting the wages of our low-wage workers. So actually in Singapore, we have a certain legislation that actually introduces this, what we call progressive wage model, where our low-wage workers in specific sectors like cleaning, security are supposed to pay certain minimum wages, and over the years, those wages are supposed to increase. Also tied to their ability to meet certain training, certification needs, etc. So government procurement is then just a lever. That legislation by right is supposed to apply to all companies, but we all know that, like we said, implementation on the ground may not always be the same as what legislation says. So one of the things that the government tried to do was that we embedded to use procurement as an extra lever to promulgate this, which is that we required our suppliers to demonstrate that they are actually in compliance with this legislative law. So we are supporting our social outcomes, but really procurement was then just a lever to help elevate or bring it closer. It wasn't the starting point of I'm doing procurement for the sake of society, but it is a societal outcome that we at policy level wanted to do, and procurement is just one of the levers by which we use to support. I will stop for now. We can discuss further, if needed to during Q&A.
Okay, thank you for those perspectives, particularly about how you're using outcome-based procurement to drive innovation, but also for those examples on how you meet societal impact, even though it was not the initial objective. So moving on to you, Charlie. As an institute that is really focused on professionalizing in Asia, how do you see the role of procurement professionals evolving to meet the expectations of Generation Beta? We had the bit about the increasing professionalization here, but it would be good to get that regional perspective from your experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Our organization is simply a 20-year-old organization, and we pretty much captured several countries in the Asia region to professionals train and certify. So we have actually educated something like 200,000 professionals, mainly from the private sector. Not only that we do provide training and certification, we provide a lot of augmentation services to many of these organizations. Why do we need to do that? It's simply because many organizations lack the resources, skills, and the scalability to really move their procurement from where they are to where they should actually be going. Why am I saying that? And in answer to the question just now, because the role of procurement is really changing a lot. Okay, but something that cannot be compromised. What are the things that we have to look into, especially considering that at this very day, our estimate of people working in procurement is around 80% are actually millennial. So if you look at that particular landscape, the ones that's going to run procurement, beta generation, is not this group. It's going to be a new set or breed of people that needs to be trained in a very different way. In fact, our most famous certification in procurement, we call Certified Strategic Sourcing Professional, where it's actually seen as the benchmark, is undergoing a lot of processes. I just came from Malaysia. There were 200 companies, and we were talking about, and we were training the 200 companies on agentic AI in procurement. What is going to happen? There's going to be a big shift. A lot of the work that we do in procurement, whether you like it or not, is going to be absorbed by agentic AI. There is going to be a lot of this technology where they can actually create autonomous processing without you knowing it, but will require some level of guidelines, a small level of guidance from procurement professionals. Having said that, what are we doing right now in our own institute? We're trying to build the capacity, the content, and the knowledge. Millennial professionals, when they were born, the first thing that they see is their mobile phones. And when they get to move into their evolution, they're very native to digitalization. So many of this is really going to be run by technology. I've seen so many technology, and I travel a lot in the world, and I see several technologies. You can even, anything that you are holding right now, we can do a should-cost analysis of that in 5 minutes. You know, total landed cost. We call it should-cost model. And if you tweak something on the specification, we can actually tweak it into what we call a could-cost model. Right now, I can prove to you, and I can even demo to you, that if you want to look any particular suppliers in your street, in your country, or globally, I can give you a very accurate data on how and who are these particular companies and how to get to reach them. How is it going to change our lives in procurement? It's going to change our lives very significantly. What do I intend to tell the people who are actually embracing these changes or wondering what's going to happen? There are 3 things that needs to be done, that we need to reinforce the skills of these professionals. 1, we have to heighten the understanding of integrity. Our jobs is nothing at all but serving our sponsors, our business units, or our proponents, nothing else but about integrity. You know. Second is we need to really fix what we really need to move our professionals into what we call strategic sourcing. We have to look at the process in itself. This is the most important part of our profession. We need to become category managers, because the buying of electricity, the buying of computers, raw materials, or anything that you buy has to have a certain level of deep domain capabilities. And it's not only that. In strategic sourcing, you are trained about stakeholder management. You are trained about portfolio analysis, supplier preferencing. You are trained about contract management. You are trained about negotiations. You know what? Even in negotiations right now, there is 21 technology wherein replacing human beings in negotiation. I will be in New York in the next 2 weeks. We are launching our 𝗂𝗶, we call it 𝗂𝗶. They can do the negotiations in behalf of our human beings or our professionals. Can you imagine that? So there's going to be a lot of things. One thing I always tell the procurement people, do not wait to be called purchasing professionals, because that isn't really right when you call us purchasing. Huh? We need to become end-to-end supply chain professionals. We need to know what it means to plan, source, make, deliver, and return. What am I saying about this? We should be trained about supply chain planning, demand sensing, supply planning, and whatever forecasting knowledge is actually there. The reason why procurement is down, doesn't have enough lead times, there's corruption, simply because we didn't manage the beginning of the process properly. Procurement is not buying. We need to be very good in sourcing, and we need to be good in logistics also. Why do we need logistics? Look at what's happening right now. Trade war shift. We have 23 companies that we're really sitting down right now with the chief procurement officers. We're looking at every SKU that they're buying. We're looking at the harmonized code. We're looking at everything. What is the first tier, second tier, and third tier excellent impact to us? If they don't study this right now, they will be asked by their CEOs, why are we spending 30 to 50% more on our cost of goods sold? Somebody's going to be answerable for that, for not doing anything. So proactiveness is very important. Lastly, I don't really like technology. I was the pioneer of e-procurement when I was the chief procurement officer of Chevron globally. I pioneered e-procurement. E-procurement can also be done in a very not so good way. If you don't ensure proper governance of your automation, you can automate corruption. And it's very easy to do that, and I can teach you how. When I was traveling in my company, I go to one company and one country, I can see that money is given under the table. I move to another country, I see that money is given on top of the table. But in most countries that I've been, most of them, they even get the table. And I said, they sugarcoat it and say, we're putting automation right to create transparency. I want to see that. I want to challenge that. And I wanted to make sure that everybody of us seated here makes that point, that we can actually build a lot of technology, but it has a very strong backbone and governance on best practices and, making things really right for the organization. Tomorrow we have a conference just across this particular hotel. We have 200 companies. We are announcing our Center of Procurement Excellence. It's a 3-floor level wherein we put all of the latest technology and the beta generation technology that's about to happen. It's a museum where we could understand how procurement have evolved and supply chain. It's going to make sure that it can show anybody in the world. We want it to become a tourist attraction too. So we'll share more tomorrow. There's going to be a press conference. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. But you still have to be here tomorrow, so we will invite him to give us the outcomes of that. Yeah. But thanks for that, really about the new skills that are needed, strategic sourcing, integrity, all against the backdrop of utilizing technology. So moving on then to our next round, which is about jobs, economic opportunity for future generations. I'd like to turn to you, Sania, to give us a bit of the small states perspective. So looking at your own country, Tuvalu, how can procurement support jobs, local industry, and economic opportunities in small island economies, especially under the severe capacity and climate constraints that you actually have to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Hello? Okay. Thank you, Howard, for the question. My answer to your question is, in small island economics like Tuvalu, procurement can play a transformative role in supporting jobs, local industry and economic opportunity, especially when tailored to the country's limited capacity and high climate vulnerability by unbundling large contracts into smaller packages, simplifying bidding procedures and offering target support to local business, and procurements can lower barriers for domestic firms and entrepreneurs, encouraging joint ventures between international contractors and local firms, and including training or employment components in contracts also help build local skills and workforce readiness over time. Procurement can also serve as a catalyst for climate resilience and sustainability by prioritizing goods, works, and services that incorporate local materials, labor, and climate resilience design, such as elevated infrastructure or cyclone resistant building. Project can deliver both immediate economic benefits and long-term environment protection. Green procurement practices such as sourcing solar systems or supporting eco-enterprises, example coconut-based products or sustainable fishing, can further stimulate innovation in local value chains while aligning with Tuvalu climate adaptation goals. At a system level, aligning procurement strategies with national development priorities and fostering regional collaboration on shared procurement, example for health or ICT system, can generate economies of scale and reduce logistical constraints, establishing suppliers development programs, maintaining roster of local providers, and hosting procurement clinics can build a more inclusive and capable local private sectors. With the right policies and support, procurements become not just a spending function, but a driver of economic resilience and inclusive growth in Tuvalu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sania, for really that long menu of options that are available to really make procurement effective in that area. Coming to you, Gul, from the Multilateral Development Bank side, I think we've seen a lot of harmonization across the development banks in terms of their procurement frameworks. Could you just tell us a bit about how MDBs are adapting their procurement frameworks to better promote long-term development value, particularly by integrating things like sustainability that we heard about, but also things like job creation into how we design and implement projects.
Thank you, Howard, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss something that sits at the core of what we as MDB do, not just the procurement, but in shaping the kind of future that we would like to build for our next generation beta. As we all know that the world is changing fast and very fast, the issues like climate change, the fragilities, the inequalities, the unemployment, and the economic uncertainties are reshaping the landscape of the globe. So in this context, as we heard also from our colleagues in the morning and now, that procurement cannot be considered as simply a tool for acquiring goods and works and services at the lowest cost. But the procurement must be a strategic driver, the one that really delivers long-term value and contributes in building these sustainable and inclusive societies. So therefore, today, MDBs are adopting their procurement framework to go beyond being a compliance function, or not just getting the lowest prices. And instead, the focus is on the value for money and the fit for purpose. That includes that how the procurement will support the sustainability, the inclusive growth, and the employment creation to achieve the longer-term development impact and goals. So let me quickly touch upon some of the key areas. Number one is the sustainability. Now, MDBs, through their procurement frameworks, have now included the social, economic consideration as part of their decision-making process. For the same reason, for the sustainability, the MDBs have been promoting actively the sustainable public procurement as a strategic driver for achieving the longer terms or long-term values and developments. And again, for this sustainable procurement, sustainable public procurement, the MDBs have issued a joint statement reinforcing their collective commitment towards the sustainable procurement processes, and also to support our member countries to embed the policies related to the sustainabilities into their regulatory frameworks. Apart from this, MDBs promote or evaluate through their procurement process, the green procurement process, by selecting the suppliers and the solutions that are reducing the environmental harm through over the life of the project. So by integrating tools like rated criteria, life cycle costing, and introducing or embedding the environmental, social, and health safety requirements and the relevant guarantees, has shifted the procurements towards building more longer-term resilience and sustainability system that will benefit the generation to come. And of course, everybody knows about those tools, but just quickly, the rated criteria values the environmental and social impact along the technical and prices in the bid, while the life cycle costing evaluates the total cost, the performance, and the impact of the project over the life cycle of the project. While this sustainable, while the ESHS performance securities and documentation, it reinforces the sustainability and defines the accountability. So coming to the other key area, which is the inclusive growth. Again, MDBs are supporting the promotion of the domestic firms, the gender responsive procurement, and the SMEs by financing in the rural structures, supporting the small businesses through the micro credits, TAs, and grant, or by simplifying the procedure for low-value, low-risk projects, and also unbundling the large contracts to to provide access to the market and a wider opportunity. So similarly, the MDBs, they provide capacity building to both the public sector and the private sector, building communities for the better outcomes. Now, coming to the last key area, which is the job creation or the employment creation. Again, MDBs are promoting the local hires and also again the gender responsive procurement by the process like defining that will promote the local hires by including the provisions in the documentations, and also such as the knowledge transfer, and also by ensuring fair market practices, and also coming to last is the skills development, and also the on-the-job trainings. So this was just to give you an example on this one, because we have a project in Pakistan which is in parallel financed by EDB and the World Bank, which is the Sin Housing Project. This project was approved after the devastating flood in Pakistan. So the communities are supported to build their own houses, and also the project include a skills development component to effectively use the microfinance credit, which is also available under the project. So how it is linked together, all of it. So definitely coming to the last, but not least, I think the procurement strategy introduction to the projects have really changed, being a game changer, because the procurement strategy provides the countries to align their outcome of the specific projects with their development goals, or what they need about all these three areas, like 3 areas of sustainability, inclusive growth, and employment. So the procurement strategy will provide them that how can they achieve the targets that they need. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gul. And I think you highlight something that's really important. Given the multiple needs that procurement now has to meet, the strategy really becomes important for actually determining which of those are going to be prioritized. So thanks for that. So coming to you, Attorney Santiago, I think you've had a very long experience in procurement reform and professionalization in the Philippines, from really overseeing a lot of institutional development in the procurement area. Could you tell us how you see, based on your experience, procurement systems evolving to deliver not just value for money, but broader economic opportunity and job creation, including at your current role in the bank? Thanks.
Good afternoon. Because I can see eyes slowly opening and closing. And I can see at this vantage point, I can see your eyes really mesmerized, by the presence of the panelists. But thank you for the question, Howard. Yes, I would always like to go back to the basics, especially in procurement transformation. We started out doing procurement reform, of course, with the hand-holding and help of our development partners. You have Asian Development Bank, of course, you have the World Bank. And then we were taught about the rigors of government contracting and public procurement. So we're coming from a very strict platform, public procurement platform, a very strict one, such that, and in our country is a civil law country. So we always hook up to the law before we say something, before we implement something. And if it is not in the law, then we cannot implement it. Or we are tied, I remember before, one agency of the government, as a matter of fact, it was the Department of Budget and Management. They were asking me, how do we procure singers to entertain during a public program? Then I said, because in the law, it's public bidding, so you go competitive bidding in hiring singers, right? So, but you see, nobody will participate anymore. And they want to get, the singers like Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli. That's my generation, so. So kind of the newbies. So then they were all laughing at me. Why competitive bidding when you can go directly to the singers and then hire them and that's it? Why make things so difficult for us? So our procurement legal framework was passed. The first one was passed in 2003. And 21 years after, it it was still the same strict legal framework that we adopted. I remember, if you recall Typhoon Haiyan, we call it Typhoon Yolanda here in the Philippines. The southern part of the Philippines was so ravaged by typhoon. There were flooding and everything. And they were asking, so how can we buy emergency goods? And then one of the resource person that they asked, you have to do competitive bidding, because competitive bidding is the primary mode of procurement under the law. So, it's not really, it's counterintuitive, and it will not address really the issue. So, moving forward, I'm looking at the procurement system that's robust, but at the same time, a system that would address the need of the procuring entities, the need of government, and ultimately the need of the people, right? So, from the strictures and rigidity of the law, I would like to see a flexible procurement system that would address our needs. That's why, we're fortunate that after 21 years, we realized, we have to really amend our legal framework. So last year, we passed the new Government Procurement Act, and it took effect last year, and then the implementing rules and regulations took effect this year. So here in this new law, there's this idea of proportionality and the idea of fit for purpose. These are known ideas that are existing already in the past, but we cannot make use of this because we're bound by the rigidity of our the old procurement law. So we are looking forward now to see flexibilities, not in a bad way, flexibilities in a way that would address the procurement and the needs of the procuring entities. We always say, I remember in 2014, I was asked, why is there underspending in government? We have so much money. As a matter of fact, Doji, my good friend here, would recall that in 2014, we were not borrowing money. Because government was oozing with funds. Why? Because we were not procuring also at the same time. There was underspending in government, and there's poor absorptive capacity. So those combined, it really affected the economy. So why were they not procuring? They were not procuring because they don't want to make decisions because they are afraid that they might be, subjected to suits, retaliation, so on and so forth, because of the strictures of the law. So this time around, we see a law, we have a new law that puts in more flexibility that would allow us to procure goods, services on time. And then, sticking in our minds that, public procurement delayed is really public service denied. So we have to have a law that's robust, but at the same time would address our need. Another area is that apart from, putting in flexibilities in the law and in the rules, we're looking at, it was mentioned already by Sir Charlie that, in the private sector, they are professionalizing themselves. In the Philippines, of course, the Government Procurement Policy Board is mandated under the law to professionalize or to create or to build procurement cadre that are really good in procurement. But that was all about trainings, knowing the law and the rules. So in 2021, when we were doing the maps, the methodology of assessing procurement systems, we recognized that we were very strong in the selection process. If you look at the entire procurement paradigm, you have planning, budgeting, you have the selection, and the contract implementation. So we're very strong in the selection process because we focused training on how to procure, processes and procedures on how to procure, and then we were able to teach this to government procurement practitioners. But we were so poor in planning and budgeting, poor in contract implementation. So that's why we see in the new law, we see how do we address this? We really have to professionalize our procurement cadre. So in the new law, we have the concept of a licensed procurement specialist, even recognized by our own Professional Regulation Commission, to address really the void in the knowledge of how to plan, how to link planning and budgeting, and how to have your goods at the right time, at the right place, at the right price. Thank you, Professor Jadun, for teaching me that in ITC ILO. The 5 rights in government contracting: right source, quantity, quality, price, and delivery. So how can we arrive at that? I think we have to really professionalize the procurement cadre in government, and government must take the necessary steps really to push forward with that, and then take it seriously, and hopefully after starting with the professionalization program in 2017, hopefully we could come up with a licensing program on government procurement practitioners, such that the idea really is that you cannot be a member of the selection committee or support administrative group if you don't have that professional training in government contracting, at least for the government. And thirdly, we opened up to the civil society organizations. We opened up to the professional organizations, as early as 2002, 2001, and then of course in the passage of the Government Procurement Reform Act. But we saw the absence of participation from the private sector, the CSOs, the NGOs. We now lack third parties looking at what we are doing in government. So we are talking about the generation beta and what do we provide to them. We have to bring them in and then experience for themselves how procurement is being done. Be part of this observer team or observer group, and to take proactive role in looking at what government is really doing. It's always important to look to know for government procurement practitioners that there are other people looking at what we are doing. And so it creates stability and the predictability in what we do in government contracting. So I think those three areas, I would like to look at those and to look at how government contracting and government procurement evolves in the next few years. Thank you, Hard.
Thank you, Santiago. So very high expectation in your new revised law, which gives you the freedom to consider all those factors, but rightly so, professionalization becomes even more important, and then the oversight that's built into that. So thank you so much. So we will go through one more round, a very quick round, after which we will come to you, the audience, for your questions. And I will start with one question for all the panelists. In terms of looking forward, what do we see as the culture shifts that are needed to make procurement fit for Generation Beta? I'll start with you, Gu. A minute or so.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Howard. I think that for raising this very important question, actually. So let me talk about three critical shifts that probably also they are interlinked. So number one is I believe the most critical shift needed is in the mindset of the procurement professionals and the decision makers. I mean, they need to shift the perception of the procurement from the cost-saving function to a more strategic enabler of value and of the value and development. So, and also they need to reframe procurement as a strategic tool to drive long-term socioeconomic values. Similarly, these professionals, they need to align their procurement practices to a more broader development agendas and goals, such as the SDGs, as the Sustainable Development Goals, and also to their national development goals. So this was the mindset shift. But for this mindset shift, I think the other critical shift is required is the culture change. If you don't have a culture change, then it will be difficult to move forward. So that's why these procurement professionals or the institutions should be encouraged that they should recognize their impact on the life of the people in the communities. So they can do this by promoting the inclusive growth criteria, the socio-economic criteria into their procurement practices, such as the development of the SMEs or gender-responsive procurement and all that, or the employment. So similarly, now coming to the last point, which is quite critical again to achieve the first two shifts, which is the policy reform. If you don't have a policy reform that covers those changes, it will be also another bottleneck. So that's why this is quite critical that the policies should be a kind of policy that is like which is aligned with the standard procurement practices, and also they include sustainability and the inclusive socioeconomic criteria, the policies also. Definitely, I mean, these reforms are essential because without these reforms, the public trust cannot be built on the system. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Charlie. Same question.
Yeah, thank you. Today is the celebration of my life. In 2021, I almost died of COVID. Reason, bad procurement. We didn't have any We didn't have any vaccines, no hospital, no doctors, no everything. You know, I was in an ICU. I was first put on a parking lot, put on an ICU. I stayed in the ICU for 1 month. April 28, 2021, I moved out of the hospital, staying alive. There must be a purpose for me still being alive and in front of you today. But what did I learn from that? You know, that we really need to move procurement, you know, from the back room, you know, to the front lines of our country. What are the skills actually needed? You know, when I was there, when everybody died except me, I said, there must be a reason why I'm still alive. You know, why am I still alive? You know, maybe I will have to do more work probably. There are a few things that I promote. I like to thank GPPB. Under this administration, they start engaging with us, and things are really going well. A few things. What is the type of mindset? We need to train our people working in procurement to focus on risk management, because everything that we see in acquisition of services and materials, it's all about managing risk for a particular proponent. Second, we have to have a mindset of value creation. Still, I'm hearing from you that procurement is the best cost, the best price, the right quality. No, it's not. I'm going to change your mind shift this afternoon. If you want to have this country move forward, you should teach procurement that what they're getting is not about that. They're trying to get the most advantageous deal for the country. And that most advantageous deal surpasses the criteria that I am hearing in this room. You need to act intelligently on things that will allow us to do better spending of the money of the people. What is the greatest skill that we need to train procurement in government? They have to become good salespeople. They have good ideas, but they cannot articulate very well why there is a needed change in our Republic Act or in our procurement law. You need to articulate that properly with a strong backbone and experience and knowledge on what strategic sourcing or strategic procurement is all about. They need to know about portfolio generation, supplier preferencing, should cost, could cost, must cost, negotiations, LNA, MDO. And you start talking to me, you're starting to wonder what's actually happening, you know, in a training class like that. But this is the type of training that is needed by all countries, not only in the Philippines. Skill set, mindset. I'm telling you, our jobs too are at stake in procurement, because even if you keep your jobs for a long time and you keep doing the same thing with no added value, sooner or later you will be seen as really non-value adding, because there will be technologies that's going to show up and showcase that's there going to take over that particular function. And our laws has to be more specific. It has to have a clear line of sight that these changes are not going to happen in the next 5 years. These changes are already happening, and before they'll be accelerated in the next 18, 24, and 36 months. That is my prediction. Because if these technologies can really demonstrate better ways of acquisitions of goods and services, what stops you for doing the right thing for your country? It will put a lot of pressure. The reason why we're putting our Center of Excellence is really to shame bad practices. Because if you don't want to have good practices and somebody knows that there's something available, then they're practically going to be put on spot. So I try to travel a lot so that people who doesn't like me don't get to catch me wherever I am. I have to be moving all of the time, because sometimes when I talk like this, they really don't like those ideas coming into the front lines of the business or the supply chain system. So I would say that those are the most important part in terms of mindset shift. Thank you.
Thank you. A real mindset shift, like you said. You are here for a purpose, and you're already living that purpose. Attorney Santiago, very quickly, what kind of shifts do you see required?
For me, I'm just looking at simple stuff about the mindset of the people in doing government procurement. We have a very big mall there in EDSA. We call it the Mega Mall, right? So there are also a lot of procurement practitioners in the Philippines are so negative, about what they are doing in government procurement, that they don't trust what they're doing. Perhaps that's the reason why we strengthen professionalization, and rightfully so, the evaluation methodology. We're not focusing anymore on the lowest calculated responsive bidder. As Sir Charlie mentioned, the most advantageous tender or the most economically advantageous tender is already in the law. And hopefully you can move forward with scoring, who's the best or the best supplier, not looking only at the price, but looking at the entire technical and price proposal. So remove this negativism, remove this doubt, and then start looking at, proactive procurement and, build procurement alongside partnership. As mentioned, we have to reach out, to the market operators and really learn from them, and then begin trusting them. There are also that narrative that would say, don't ask the market operators because they will dupe you this and that, but where will you ask questions? Where will you ask technical specifications? Where will you gather them? We don't know them, right? So it's really high time to look at this and then start trusting the system as well. The procurement system, yes, before the Government Procurement Reform Act was kind of strict, but now you have a new procurement law. So we have to look at this in such a way that, it builds trust and, creates partnership between government and the people. So do away with a lot of this negativity. We call them nega in the Philippines. So if I become rich, so I'll be the mall. The mall will be named Nega Mall. So I'll put all the nega people there. So we need to buy already. And then, I recalled, I forgot to mention earlier, it affected our economy. We all know we are all procurement champions, procurement transformators. Procurement affects the economy. And then we were looking at public procurement strictures for 21 years. And looking back, I would say the way we had it truly impacted our economy. We could have grown more, if you have a lot of these flexibilities along the way. And hopefully the maturity, we can gain the maturity moving on, such that perhaps when World Bank and ADB were thinking of principles-based procurement in 2015, 2016, we could perhaps, when we are matured enough, we can go about principles-based versus schools-based public procurement. Thank you.
Thank you. Satnian, over to you.
In the Tuvalu context, positioning procurement as a strategic driver of future focus, inclusive developments requires a critical shift in three key areas. In the mindset, a shift from viewing procurement as a transactional, compliance-focused function to a strategic enabler of national development goals. This includes recognizing procurement's roles in building climate resilience, supporting local economic participation, and delivering long-term value for money. In terms of the system, strengthening procurement system through digitization, example EGP, streamline procedures and better data management to enhance transparency, efficiency, and accountability, especially given Tuvalu limited human and institutional capacity. For institutional culture, cultivating a culture of proactive planning, risk-informed decision-making, and cross-sector collaboration. This involves empowering procurement staff, promoting ethical practices, and fostering partnerships that prioritize sustainable, inclusive outcomes, particularly in sectors critical to Tuvalu, such as climate adaptation, health, and infrastructure. These shifts are essential to transform procurement into a tool for resilient and equitable development in Tuvalu. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Sue Louis.
I think like all the panelists, one of the critical changes is definitely mindset, but maybe a different spill of mindset is that we need to look at the people doing the procurement as well as the management who's overseeing the organizations. So in Singapore, we've actually been operating on principles-based procurement rules for our government procurement for longest time. But whilst it's principles-based, you still have people who still operate very compliance-based, simply because fear of audit, fear of accountability. I think that's what happens in a lot of organizations. We need to change the mindset of people doing this procurement work to actually believe in the principles, know how to apply the principles flexibly. That mindset of thinking around outside of the box. What is said just gives the guidance. You need to contextualize it. You need to look at the circumstance and to use it flexibly. That in itself, right, is actually quite a big mindset shift that we find that even after 10, 20 years in Singapore, we are also still struggling to get everybody there. And I think one thing that we're also thinking about is beyond that as a mindset that I'm procurement, I think was it Charlie or Dennis who mentioned, we are very good at sourcing. But actually, upfront planning and contract management are just as important. And in particular, I think one of the things that our team is actually looking at is really unlocking value. At the planning start, procurement or chief of procurement of the organization should be at the management table. That is something, to even say, is procurement the right tool to be used? What is to be done? You have a project, you want to do this. Is procurement the right thing to do? And what are you going to procure? Is this the right way to procure? Procurement should have that commercial acumen as well. All this is mindset that you need to change yourself to be thinking in that manner, value adding to that discussion to say what you're going to buy without, even talking about that. Of course, you then need what I call management mindset shift. We do have some CEOs around who basically see procurement as a corporate function, just delivering cost savings. And this sort of management would definitely then place procurement, see procurement as a certain mindset, which then makes it difficult for procurement to value add. We also need all this management, senior leadership to actually change their mindset, to accept that trained procurement professionals can value add to the discussion, can give very good ideas, can in fact, with just a more commercially savvy way of structuring your contract, you could already deliver savings. I'm still buying the same thing. I'm still using the same specifications, but maybe just a couple of changes in the requirements or in the conditions of contract will make a difference. And these are all the types of things in terms of mindset that we also need to be moving towards, not just of the procurement professionals, but of our wider stakeholder group, to accept that procurement can advise.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and I think it resonates with what Charlie had mentioned about procurement needing advocacy skills also to really be able to advocate for the right things when they are at the table. So we have 15 minutes for your questions, so if you have any questions, so please do send them. And we've seen a few come in, I think. One, we'll try and start with the easier one. What skills do procurement professionals need to be effective in the digital age? I think we touched on this, but very quickly, Charlie.
Yeah, there is a need for procurement professionals to act now, to up their ante on the skills needed in the incoming revolution of artificial intelligence. Really, I'm telling you, this is going to change the entire landscape on how we do plan, source, make, deliver, and return. Most important here, really, the skills that is needed, it's not really technical, because you can leave the technical attributes to the software engineers, or you can leave it to AI, because even AI will create softwares for you on its own. So what do we need right now? The skills that is most needed really is, that I see is really three things. One is like stakeholder management. You need to carry the flag on how transformation is going to be. That's why I keep on emphasizing, teach procurement to really communicate, sell, and really advocate as you say things. Ensure that all of them are really trained on strategic sourcing, because strategic sourcing takes into account supplier relationship management. And that's going to be a common practice, especially in very difficult trade scenarios, especially what we're seeing now. Especially if there's a war, especially if there's a pandemic. Your current policy will be thrown out of the window because it will not work. Remember what happened during the pandemic? We were willing to pay any price as long as the vaccines really come in. And it's supplier relationship that's going to make and give you the most advantageous deal. And third thing is value creation. How do you really make an impact and really justify it? So the answer to that is not really technology or technical. It's really about people. I think people will remain as a strong catalyst in the movement of artificial intelligence. But the skill sets is going to evolve significantly. This is going to be unprecedented. This is going to be unprecedented. I really worry a lot, for students. I really worry a lot for our children. I really worry a lot for several organizations. If you believe that procurement and supply chain is the one that impacts the balance sheet, the income statement, or the cash flow for companies in the private sector, I think in the public sector, I think we should have the same appreciation, because we're going to control the budget. And budgets here are not going to be very important. Assurance of supply, quality, cost, innovation, regulatory compliance, sustainability, all brought together is going to really define on how effective we are in acquiring these goods and services for our countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question we have is, considering the changing economic landscape, how can we ensure that the needs of future generations are included in today's procurement process? Sue Louis, you want to give this a try?
I think this would depend on, what the procurement is for. I think today we talk about being more agile, we talk about being more flexible in our procurement. So one thing, let's say for instance in ICT deployment, Singapore is actually, our government technology agency is actually very much advocating for a lot of small pilots, agile development, keep designing with the users in mind. And in fact, let's just, we can test a lot of things that could maybe the new generation will be more interested in. But you test it, you pilot it fast, and if something doesn't go right, please stop. Please do not take it as sunk cost and continue and continue. I think this is something that we want to see. And probably the other thing that procurement needs to be done in a manner that is actually more supportive of them. I think today the younger generation all like to see things fast, achieve things fast, and procurement needs to be seen as a supporter and with them rather than against them. I think today many of us who are from procurement will all know, many people in our organization always say procurement is the one that's slowing us down. Procurement is the one telling us we can't do this, we can't do that. I think we need to get out of that. Even in the way we talk, or as we say, advocacy, we need to be talking that in same language as our users, saying that procurement is here to help. Tell me what is your problem, and we can see what we can work within. Of course, within certain bounds of accountability and governance, but we are not your detractor. We are not here to tell you no. We are here to help you.
Thank you. And the final question that we have, and I'll direct this to you, Santiago, again from your experience. And this comes to the term value for money. And the request is, can we define what we mean by value for money? Because this is often debated with law enforcers, that public procurement must choose the lowest bid. So I think, as you mentioned, Philippines now looking much broader than price. How are you dealing, especially with the law enforcement officers, in making those decisions?
Thank you, Howard. Value for money essentially is like, you get, the essence is essentially you get the best quality at the best price. You need to have that optimum combination of quality and cost. So before, we have that concept of lowest calculated bidder or lowest calculated responsive bidder. So this time around, you look at a given fund, you're looking at how you will rate technical specifications alongside price. So we might look, or we may look at price-quality ratio. That's why in the new law, in the Philippine context, we have that. We essentially adopted the European approach from meat to mat. So we have both in our system now, the most economically advantageous tender, or the most economically advantageous bid, and the most advantageous bid. So in the MIB or the MIB, most economically advantageous bid, we have both quality and price given allocation as to rating. Whereas in the MAT or the MAB, the most advantageous bid, so we're just looking at the highest technical scorer. Whoever is the highest, we look at the price. If it's within the budget, then we go on, push forward with the award. So essentially, we parted already with the concept of lowest bidder. But of course, we know the explanation. It's not really the lowest bid. You know, you still look at the technical aspect of the entire opportunity, and then if they pass the technical, then you look at the price, right? But of course, the narrative is so different as we went on in the implementation of that law, so we have to change it. So the definition now of what you call value for money or best value for money is essentially the optimum combination of your quality and cost to meet the needs of the, of the project owner or the procuring entity. So that's how I put it. Howard, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think this also goes to what Undersecretary Wen mentioned this morning, that part of this change was really also speaking to the auditors first to make sure that they really understood that context. So with that, we like to open up to the audience to see if there are any further questions. We have a hand, 2 hands here. Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon to all. My question is for Director Charlie. Sir, earlier you mentioned that e-procurement or automation aren't necessarily silver bullets in combating corruption. You even mentioned that if you don't take care of the governance, these tools can only automate corruption. You even mentioned that you can teach us how. Maybe not in this forum. My question is, maybe outside the automation, which everybody's doing, what practical tips can you share to us to mitigate the risk of corruption?
Okay, thanks. We'll take one more.
Normally,
This one more question. Yes.
should I answer the question
Okay,
first?
go ahead.
Okay. Before you move into technology implementation, I highly encourage any entity, particularly in the public sector, to train their public procurement professionals on strategic sourcing. What is strategic sourcing? It's a step-by-step process on how to really get the most advantageous deal. So when I was implementing e-procurement, because I was the first one, remember I was brought in by the 6th biggest conglomerate of this country to create the largest e-procurement marketplace. At that time, it was 2002, it was called Buy and Trade. So 146 Philippine companies putting all of their spend in one portal. What happened? There's a lot of challenges to do and select the particular supplier. There is a data privacy. There is collusion, And if you want to really control the supply, why don't you put all of your favorite suppliers without the proper process and you'll make a lot of money? Don't copy that, okay? But I'm telling you, if I'm going to implement such things, very important is to really certify their procurement people with strategic sourcing process. That is the best silver bullet that I could really tell, because the Fortune companies are doing it. What did my boss tell me one time? Charlie, try to implement this to the 60 countries. And he actually told me, how do I do that, sir? Copy shamelessly. So when you see best practice and it's really the right practice, do not be ashamed in adopting it, because it will stand the test of time. I cannot explain to you what strategic sourcing is all about, but that there's a process, like stakeholder management, business needs analysis, portfolio analysis, supplier preferencing, price and cost evolution matrix, all the way to negotiations, contracting, supply relationship management, and category management. Why do I have to learn that by heart? Because in planes, in trains, in wherever I go, when I talk to procurement people, I always ask them if they know it. And most often, they're willing to know it, or they're willing to understand. That is how you bulletproof your e-procurement. Do not rely simply on automation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. And first off, thank you for the wonderful discussion of this very competent panel. We're really learning a lot. My question would like to deviate from the main discussion. We've heard that we need to change the skill set and the mindset. And as Dennis said earlier, in the Philippines, we come from a rigid, strict legal paradigm, which I say is based on distrust. No? Distrust of the practitioners. It has so many rules that can get you in trouble. Now we're moving. We have a paradigm shift towards a law that says when you have a doubt in procurement, it should be resolved in favor of government procurement. That's very novel. The situation, however, would be the legal system will have a time to catch up because the violations of procurement law that happened will finally reach the Supreme Court in, 5 years, 10 years? There's a lag in the prosecution of cases which were ruled on by the courts under the old rule, under the old set of rules. So, to me, this would serve as a chilling effect on the new breed of procurement practitioners that want to take on the new policy, the new principle. How, aside from engaging with the judiciary and the prosecution service, who are really dealing with these cases under the old procedures, how can we avoid that chilling effect and convince our procurement practitioners, I'm one of them, incidentally, from the Department of the Interior. How can we teach our government civil servants in procurement that yes, you may proceed under the new rules and maybe it won't be as strict as before? Anyone in the panel?
Gould, you want to start this off?
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll take a quick crack at it. At first, when I was talking to a Cambodian friend, he was asking me, why is your procurement law having criminal provisions? Isn't it procurement is all about administrative matter, about how to buy and ultimately award and ultimately deliver and satisfy the need, right? So I said, because when we were crafting the procurement law in the Philippines, we were combating graft and corruption. So that explains why you have the sinews of strictures in the law. That's why from the start to 21 years back, we were implementing it the hard way. And as you were saying, Yusek Omar, there were really that's some sort of a level scare amongst the procurement practitioners. Sometimes they don't want to be members of the Bids and Awards Committee or our selection committee for that apprehension of being sued. One time we were having trainings, and then we discovered the idea of a contracting officer in the United States. The contracting officer is not sued, and then he makes decision on who to select. So we're trying to adopt that, but we sort of got a lot of monkey wrenches. Don't do this and that because there's still that culture of prevention, right? Because we believe that an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, right? But really, first off, to answer that, in the new law, we decriminalize those acts. There's no more criminal provision in the law. But admittedly, there are still criminal laws in the country, so in other countries, right? So that they can make use of, or the prosecution body can make use of, to sue someone else. But at least in the new procurement law, we don't have that criminal provisions anymore. So it's purely administrative, but of course strengthen the administrative responsibility of procurement practitioners. And I think one big leap will be how to really reach out not only to the prosecutorial arm of the government, but with our supreme auditing institution, and how they would think things in a different light, in a different way. That's why when we were discussing with the GPP-BTSO and of course the PSDBM, we're telling them the first crack to government training on government contracting under the new law should be with the Supreme Auditing Institution. Because with their findings, follow a lot of these criminal cases. After the Supreme Auditing Institution, which we call Commission on Audit, we have the Ombudsman filing cases based on the findings of the COA. But then, with the new provisions under the new law, with a lot of these flexibilities and the mindset of proportionality, mindset of fit for purpose, which we got from the MAPS exercise, advice from our development partners. I think there will be a mind shift. Give it a year or two. Even COA will be thinking of a different way or a different manner by which to implement this. Maybe process audit, no longer fraud audits. It's really, as I mentioned earlier, it's really high time for us to look at the positive way of government contracting than the negative way, right? So let's move forward along these lines, because really it's high time. The warning coming from Sir Charlie, we need to do this. And also we really have to think positively and be able to address the needs of government instead of looking the other way, looking at how, or prevention of you not being sued, this and that. No? So what I say now, I'll give you an example of a modality that we included in the new law. It's direct acquisition. It's 200,000 pesos and below, around $4,000. In Singapore, you have this quick buy, right? Yeah. So in the Philippines, you have this 200,000 pesos and below. You can go directly to a store and buy whatever you need. And then the quick challenge again to us was, will they not abuse that? Everything's subject to abuse, I said. Just move forward, let us buy. It's high time for us to buy and address our needs than, waiting there, having that Damocles sword of analysis paralysis. We cannot buy because you are afraid to make a decision. So in government, we have to address these needs now than, dilly-dally and think of negative stuff. So that's, I think, my point there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Santiago. Very well said. So we have to wrap up now. And as we wrap up, I'd like to highlight 3 quick takeaways that I picked up from this. One is procurement should be repositioned as a lever for long-term public value. Second, it is critical then that we invest in people. So professionalization is really very important now. And the multiple skills that are required of procurement staff actually make this more emphatic. And then the third is that the time to act is now. And we are already shaping the world of Generation Beta that we will inherit. So in closing, we would like to say procurement isn't just about what we buy today. It's about the future we build for Generation Beta. And with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists and invite them for the commemorative photo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Centenary and panel. Let's have a photo op, please, on stage. Everybody, please stand up. Thank you, panel, for your thought-provoking insights and for helping us envision a forward-thinking procurement system. Ladies and gentlemen, after the photo op, let's take a short break, enjoy some refreshments. Feel free to connect with other delegates, take a picture in the photo booth. We'll resume after 15 minutes. Let's resume at 3:30, ladies and gentlemen. Check. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start in 5 minutes. Again, we will start in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we will resume in 5 minutes. We will resume in 5 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How was your break? All right, everybody who's still outside, please come in. Hopefully you've loaded up on coffee. Yes? Coffee's good. Coffee's free. All right, ladies and gentlemen, up next is, of course, the third panel. And I hope the moderator is here. So we will dive deeper into how training, certifications, and skills development are strengthening procurement systems and building public trust. We're excited to have Dr. Eileen Lorena Mamino. Is the doctor in the house? The doctor's here. Yes. The doctor's in. She is from, of course, the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And our moderator, please join me in welcoming Dr. Eileen Lorena Mamino. Please give her a warm round of applause. Dr. Mamino, the show is yours, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, wait, I'm looking for Sir Jadon. Okay, we are the last session for this afternoon. So please get ready for your questions because our resource person would like an active participation of our audience. Okay. So I'm delighted to moderate this important session on professionalizing procurement, an area that's critical if we are able to build stronger, more accountable, and high-performing procurement systems. Professionalization is more than training. It's about building a culture of competence, strategy, and trust. In this panel, we will hear perspectives from experts across government and academia on how different institutions are navigating this complex but crucial journey. We have a rich discussion lineup, and I'm excited to be joined by a group of brilliant minds who will help us dive deep into today's dialogue. But first, allow me to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is a senior public procurement specialist, over 30 years experience in capacity building for modernization and reform of national public procurement systems, as well as an advisor for major international public procurement transactions funded by MDBs. He authored a multitude of training modules exploring the procedural and business competencies required at various stages of the procurement process, supply chain, and aim of capacity building and or professionalization of the procurement function in the number of European, Asian, African, and Middle Eastern countries. Our speaker brings a wealth of experience and insight, and I'm sure his presentation will spark meaningful dialogue. Please join me in welcoming Senior Procurement Advisor and former head of the Procurement Division, International Labor Organization International Training. Let's give a warm of applause to Engineer George Jadon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the World Bank and the Islamic Development Bank and the Asian Development Bank for inviting me to speak on this occasion on the topic of professionalization which is a topic very dear to my heart. I have been at the forefront of pioneering schemes for professionalization. The earliest one was following the oil for food scandal in Iraq, where the United Nations General Assembly asked for an investigation, and as a result, there was a requirement to certify UN procurement officers and to introduce one of the most visible professionalization schemes. Now, let me just explain the structure of my presentation. I will start with the background about the increasing complexity of public procurement, which is the major driving force behind the requirement of professionalization. When we talk about professionalization, we must distinguish it from professionalism. When we talk about professionalism, we are talking about enhancing the capacity of procurement practitioners. But when we talk about professionalization, we will see in this presentation that we are taking a step further towards making it mandatory, towards closing certain tasks of the profession for non-certified people. And the presentation will talk about these differences between professionalism and professionalization. And then we'll talk about the process for introducing professionalization. This does not happen overnight. It's a long process. I will navigate with you some recommendations about how to go about implementation of professionalization schemes. You can take them as best practices. They have no binding force on any country, but they are useful recommendations that you may wish to abide by. And finally, we go through some conclusions which are basically driven from my experience on this issue. Now, we all know that procurement is a multidisciplinary field. By multidisciplinary, we mean that it requires knowledge and practice in various areas. In science, in economics, in financial management, in many areas. And therefore, this function has become more complex due to the increasing scrutiny and the increasing requirements posed by the citizens and by donors. Things like what the government buys now has become much more complex than what they used to buy. Economic growth produces new products, new services, new complexities of what the government needs to buy. Markets are becoming more complex. There is now more and more focus on the requirement that procurement officers should examine upstream the supply chain, make sure that all the subcontractors of their main contractors do respect human rights, do respect labor rights. That is a new development, which is now under increasing scrutiny. New contractual modalities, outsourcing, public-private partnerships, increased obligations with respect to climate change, with respect to environmental and social requirements to be respected during contract implementation, but also during competition. All these increasing requirements have been imposed on public procurement while still being required to deliver value for money in a fair, proportionate, open, and transparent manner. But look here at the sentence that I put. Not only for the buyer, but the boundaries for calculating value for money are wider than the buyer. They actually could include externalities which have a price to the government. So the boundaries for calculating value for money are not restricted to the procuring entity, but can go to the wider society. So this is a departure, a big departure from the long-standing tradition of lowest price or lowest evaluated bid. What brought this change? Several factors brought this change. The EU directives of 2014, MDB regulations of 2016, and OECD recommendations on well-functioning public procurement systems of 2015. All these together gave a momentum to the change of legal framework of public procurement, whereby public procurement was also to be used for strategic purposes of economic development and sustainable development goals. Let's start with the directives. In 2014, the EU introduced the new Public Procurement Directive, number 24. Now, these directives are not national laws. These directives are minimum standards that must be met by the national laws of the member states, the 28 member states of the European countries. And these directives recognize the importance of using procurement for strategic purposes. For example, centralized buying. We can achieve economies of scale through centralized buying. So the EU directives introduced centralized buying as something that the governments of the member states have to consider. Use of life cycle costing and social environmental award and selection criteria. When we talk award criteria, it means bid evaluation criteria. When we talk selection, the terminology of the EU, selection means pre-qualification or shortlisting. So you could actually deny participation to a bidder who has offenses in the legal and labor domains. You could also introduce evaluation criteria with respect to the award, which are based on environmental and social conditions, provided they are related to the subject matter of the contract. The European Union stresses this, that all your criteria must be related to the subject matter of the contract. You cannot put criteria related to overall policies of the company, of the bidder, or whatever. But it must be related to something that you are buying, to the subject matter of the contract. Then the EU found it necessary to facilitate access of SMEs to the public procurement market, and found it also necessary that certain disadvantaged or handicapped segments of the population have reserve procurement, that nobody can compete for that except them. Then more detailed rules on transparency, conflict of interests, contract amendments, and exclusion grounds. In the EU, exclusion grounds, or let's say qualification, is a very serious matter. We call this qualification criteria as leg cutting. You know, if I don't qualify you, you are out of the process. But if in the award criteria, I penalize your bid a little bit because you're still in the competition and you may still win. But for selection criteria, you are out if I am not qualifying you. And that's a serious matter. Then, of course, expansion of the use of e-procurement systems and the expansion of the use of negotiated procedure. EU considered that it is important to introduce flexibility with respect to negotiation. Having put all these requirements that member states have to transpose in their laws, indirectly the EU has raised the required professional profile of public procurement practitioners. It asks them to master new skills, new competencies. In 2015, OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation for Development in Paris, which is the club of the 45 most developed countries, also published a recommendation. Mind you, the difference between a directive and a recommendation. A directive is something that the member countries have to implement in their national laws. A recommendation is something that's the best practice that you can follow. Again, the OECD, which contains all the 28 states, plus another 20 countries, like the US, Canada, Japan, many countries, Singapore, again, doubled the recommendations of the EU that we need to use public procurement strategically. And there are detailed recommendations, but most important for the purpose of this, because we are not going to touch the legal reform here, most important is that national systems must have a dedicated procurement workforce with the capacity to deliver value for money efficiently and effectively. Now, after the directives were transposed into a law in the European Union, it was noticed that to make the directives effective, there was a need for professionalization. And then came the recommendation of the EU in 2017 about the need that member states should pursue a professionalization policy and strategy. And based on their policy and strategy, have implementation programs for their professionalization. It encouraged all the member states to roll out, design, and deliver professionalization initiatives at all levels of the function, and also to raise the awareness of auditors, financial controllers, judges about the professionalization scheme, so that it is well known that now we are going to introduce a new legal framework, which is the EU directives, with more complex, let's say, procurement methods, and more complex selection and award methodology. So that those who control the function also must be aware of the professionalization strategy. This recommendation set 3 pillars for the professionalization strategy. One is defining a policy. This policy should be tailor-made to meet the country's administrative context and should be either standalone because of the importance public procurement in terms of money has for the national economy, or as part of overall reform of the civil administration. The aim of the policy is to attract, develop, and retain skills, focus on performance and strategic outcomes, and make the most out of available tools and techniques. That is what the recommendation said, that the policy should focus on attracting continuous development and performance and evaluation of the procurement function. It should address all participants in the procurement process, be in line with civil service policies, to not contradict civil service policies. One of the issues we faced in the UN professionalization is that the HR departments of the UN found it very difficult for those who fail to get professionalized to be thrown out of the service or to be sidelined. So the professionalization policy must be in unison with the HR policies and with a clear assignment of tasks as to who will implement this strategy at the central policy level, like the Public Procurement Policy Board, or any professional associations that should handle this matter. The second pillar is human resources. The first thing is to define what the function is. We said that public procurement is multidisciplinary. But what are the competencies required to do it? So the EU introduced a competence framework with 30 competencies that procurement officers must master. Now, these 30 competencies are not cast in stone. The competence framework is flexible, you can adjust, you can pick and choose, but it gives you a very good idea of what are the competencies. In fact, this was a groundbreaking achievement to define the skill of competencies that procurement officers must have. Once the competence framework is defined, then training programs for new entrants, for mid-level professionals, for senior professionals, and even for those who control the function. And then human resource policies must be conducive for career planning and for recognition of the new knowledge, for certification, and for incentives in order to encourage procurement officers to perform well. We know the limitations of government to increase civil service salaries, but it can help a lot by having incentives in terms of recognition, in terms of award. I was visiting a neighboring country recently, and I said one form of recognition is to introduce procurement cells into the ministries, procurement departments, where the procurement officer will sit in a place which is equipped to do the function, having access to information on the market, having a library, having a nice computer, having continuous internet connection. So recognition is one of the factors can motivate professionalization, plus other schemes like excellence awards and the like. The third pillar is systems. Don't ask me to do green procurement if you don't give me the tools. When I was promoting green procurement in the EU, we developed the GPP toolkit, the Green Public Procurement Toolkit, for several product items, for cars, for lighting, for buildings. So the procurement officer has this toolkit. He knows how to prepare the specifications or how to guide those who prepare the specifications, what to choose. Also, codes of conduct, tools to promote integrity. Very critical aspect of procurement practitioner is personality, behavior, and integrity. You cannot underestimate, I've seen in my life excellent technicians who were good procurement officers, but lacked the behavior and lacked the integrity. And this is an issue. Using data on case studies, on irregularities, and promoting them, developing systems for detecting corruption before it happens, red flags, developing systems to curb corruption. First to detect, then to curb, and then systems to make sure that anyone who commits corruption will be caught. And once he is caught, he is punished, or she is punished. Introduction of standard templates for bid evaluation, for bidding documents, for LCC calculation, for rated criteria calculation. Don't expect the procurement officer to do this without assistance. The procurement officer must have these templates. It facilitates the job. And then technical assistance by help desks, hotlines, on-the-job assistance, and forming networks and communities of practice. So this is at the third level, systems. So we talk about policy, we talk about HR, we talk about systems. So professionalization calls for these three pillars together. So the competency framework. This was introduced in 2020 by the EU with 30 competencies, marking the procurement profession as a 4-level profession, very much in line with the International Civil Service codification of occupations. Every occupation in the International Civil Service classification has 4 levels. The competency framework lists the competencies that public buyers need to fulfill their tasks. In 2020, only 40% of the 28 countries in Europe had recognized procurement as a profession. So you see that this is a new development, and very few countries in the world, as of today, recognize procurement as a stand-alone profession. Now, 19 of these 30 competencies are procurement competencies. 9 of them horizontal. Horizontal means apply across the procurement process at all stages of the procurement process, like knowledge of the legal framework, use of digital tools, supplier management, sustainable procurement, planning, negotiations, the steps of the process, innovation, and category specific means goods, works, or services. So these 9 skills are hard skills called horizontal because they are needed at each stage of the procurement cycle. Then there are 6 competencies which are pre-award, like preparation of tender documents, market engagement, tender evaluation, tender specification, procurement strategy, needs assessment. And then 4, which are post-award, like certification of payments, contract management, reporting, conflict resolution, or mediation. I will not go into these competencies because all of you are in the profession and know exactly what is meant by this. And then I don't have enough time for. Then the soft competencies are 11. Self or personal competencies, 4. Adaptability, being able to adapt to work under pressure, different circumstances, analytical thinking, communications, ethics. People management or people relations are 4. Collaboration, team management, stakeholder relationship, organizational awareness. Performance competencies, 3. Project management, performance orientation, internal control, and risk management. As we said earlier, this is a matrix that presents the 30 competencies and lists for every level, the basic, the introductory, the advanced, and the expert, what are the competencies, what this person must be able to do at each level. Then in 2023, OECD came with a policy paper on professionalization of public procurement. It described the process, the steps that need to be undertaken to introduce professionalization. First, assess the level. Where do we stand now? Along 2 dimensions. Is there a professionalization system now or no? Many countries have started on the path by introducing some form of certification, like the Philippines. And second is to assess the current level of capability. Check what are the performance problems. Or do a training need assessment, a training TNA. Second, develop a professionalization strategy with initiatives, targets, indicators of achievement, a time frame. This is going to be fast, but it must be within an affordable budget. The third one is implementing the strategy. That's going to take time. That is going to take time in many years, because we have to develop the competency framework, build the training systems, set up incentive schemes, and promote collaboration, and get the civil service organizations to agree and start rolling out candidates for professionalization. In 2020, OECD, which has earlier introduced the MAPS assessment of country system, introduced a supplementary module on assessment of professionalization. This is a very useful tool that can be used for step 1 of the OECD recommendation, the assessment. It focuses on assessment of the existing conditions for or against the introduction of professionalization. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we must distinguish here professionalization from professionalism. Professionalization is the process by which the occupation of the practitioner become a profession recognized by the civil service of highest integrity, competence, and differentiable from other professions like medicine, like whatever other professions, engineering, are recognized in the country. Whereas professionalism is what we have been doing for a long time. Capacity building, certifying people that they have attended and passed the training, that is professionalism. Increasing the aptitude of the people working in the procurement profession, but without procurement being recognized as a profession in the civil service, and without closure of the profession, that only certified people, only professionalized people can do certain jobs. The module has 10 indicators and 21 sub-indicators to be assessed. I advise you to go through it because it tells you how to measure and how to identify the constraints and the favorable conditions for introducing professionalization in the country. So the roadmap. We have seen what is the driving force behind professionalization. We have seen that it is no longer a luxury. More and more it is becoming very important if we have to achieve value for money. The procurement job has become much more complex than before, and to achieve value for money, the procurement officers must be trained, must have access to systems, must be recognized, must be paid well in order for them to uphold the profession and to save money. All research indicates that for every dollar spent on human resource development in the procurement function, the savings are many times fold. $5 to $7 you get in saving for every dollar in terms of efficiencies, in terms of cost reductions in procurement. So the first step is recognition. These do not have necessarily to come in order, but these are to show you the path towards professionalization. The Public Procurement Board must recognize procurement as a profession in order to be able to convince the civil service to introduce it as a profession. Then development of a competence framework, codes of ethics. And the codes of ethics must be strict. If you violate the code of ethics, then you are subject to administrative sanctions or subject to lose the profession. Then development of tools and templates. Don't ask me to do things without giving me the systems. I've seen many countries introduce sustainable procurement requirements without giving the procurement officers the tools? How can he venture to go out to the market with a sustainable procurement purchase when he doesn't know that his criteria are defensible or not? It is like this officer is putting the rope around his neck because he is without guidance on how to implement sustainable procurement. Then certification of the practitioners. Certification is a formal recognition process that this individual has the aptitude to perform the job. It is provided by a certification body, which itself must be accredited. So accredited means accreditation by a third party that this provider of certification or training is competent and is doing a good job. It could be the Public Procurement Board. And then definition of areas of practice reserved, because it's a gradual process. I can't close the profession to everybody. I must say that for contracts above a certain value, only professionalized people can sign off. But leaving in parallel the opportunity for non-certified people to work also in the meanwhile. Remuneration. We have to give some recognition, if possible in the form of remuneration, but otherwise it could be in the form of incentives like opportunities to get trained and to exchange experience. But very important, because procurement has been a field not touched almost by universities with respect to research. We want to encourage governments to recognize that professionalization is a continuous process. Markets get more complex. The requirements for doing the job gets more complicated. New developments happen, new changes in the law happen. We need the universities and the training institutions and the think tanks to be on our side in order to continuously develop the capacity. This slide gives an example of the Philippines, where we know that the new Government Procurement Act has made professionalization a requirement. Now, the Government Public Procurement Board, or the TSO office, in collaboration with the University of Central Luzon, has actually been providing certification in the form of 3 courses, covering various aspects of the procurement cycle. But with the advent of the new law, things has changed from the current situation, which is enhancing professionalism, to the next situation, which is procurement professionalization in the Philippines. Now, the new act goes really very proactive in considering professionalization as a core principle of procurement policy in the Philippines. Like economy, like efficiency, professionalization is a core principle of the new act. Section 46 of the act requires the Department of Budget and Management to create procurement positions in the civil service. So it's very specific, the act, that makes a requirement the creation of procurement jobs. Of course, in consultation with the Civil Service Commission of the Philippines. Under Section 46, the Professional Regulation Commission, in consultation with the board, is tasked with administering, regulating the procurement profession. So the profession will be regulated by an independent body, the Professional Regulation Commission. I think that the new Act has stressed professionalization to the extent possible. Can I have some water, please? Conclusions. Professionalization is a long and time-consuming process, requires the participation of many actors of varied nature, public, private, civil society, professional associations, training providers, and academic institutions. Globally, professionalization is still at an early stage, where many definitions of the requirement and the steps are still being formed. And this is why I told you, no size fits all. These are recommendations. Take what is fit for you in terms of the steps of introducing professionalization. But what should be the role of government? Is to promote the conditions for professionalization to arise. Define the conditions in the civil service. Define preferences for new entrants for hiring professionals at mid-level or at higher level. Establish controls on accountability and integrity. Trying to give reasonable remuneration to the professionals. Treat procurement as the other professions, like engineering, like medicine, and let it be regulated by professional bodies. While you withdraw to be a controller of how effective are these organizations working. Important thing about professionalization, it brings capability, brings aptitude to the function, and raises the bar for accountability. You cannot plead ignorance if you are professionalized. You do a mistake, you are accountable for your mistake. It raises the bar for accountability, but at the same time should give you benefits of recognition, of incentives, bring procurement decision-making to the corporate level, to the ministries level, to the policy-setting level. MDBs are currently promoting professionalization. An example, for example, is the World Bank, who is currently financing feasibility studies in several countries to see how best to introduce professionalization in these countries. I can also talk about an initiative that was recently approved for Latin America and the Caribbean. It was championed by Jean-Jacques Verdot, the principal manager for procurement in LAC, where they want to introduce, on a pilot basis, professionalization for level 3 officers who will work on major World Bank projects. I think that professionalization is coming. It's necessary, and it's important for achieving value for money and for recognizing the profession. Sorry I kept you for longer than I should, but apologies for delaying you. I hope I was useful in presenting the map towards professionalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Jadon. It's okay, sir. We are the last presenter. Okay. So thank you, sir, again for that insightful presentation. There's certainly a lot to unpack, and we're looking forward to hearing different perspectives on the points you've raised. At this point, I'd like to invite our discussants to join us on stage. Okay, we are joined today by our esteemed panelists, each bringing a unique lens to our panel discussion. Allow me to briefly introduce. First is the Vice President for Academy of Policy and Development, Ministry of Finance, Vietnam, Dr. Nguyen De Vinh. Dr. Vinh has over 20 years of experience in advisory, research and training, and an experienced expert in public procurement, master planning, and comparative competitive advantage in provinces. Okay, our second panelist is the Deputy Director General of Government Procurement Policy Board, Technical Supports Office, Philippines, Attorney 𝗘𝘀𝘁 𝗵𝗂. Attorney 𝗵𝗂 is a distinguished CPA lawyer and a proven leader in public governance, policy development, and executive management. As a certified public accountant and an active member of Philippine Bar, she passionately pursues advocacy for ethical leadership, accountability, and excellence in public service. Our third and last panelist, Financial Advisor for Government of Rajasthan Transport and Road Safety Department, Rajasthan, Republic of India, Mr. 𝗔𝘀𝗶 𝗪. He is a distinguished professional and senior servant with the government of Rajasthan in India, with 3 decades of experience in reforms, generated systems, strengthening, and execution. He led the World Bank project on strengthening public financial management, under which several unique reforms were undertaken and implemented in Rajasthan. Okay, so before we start, we would like to encourage everyone to, if you have questions, please use the QR codes in your table so that we can read your question. Our secretariat can give us your question using the Slido. Okay, thank you. So of course we have Sir Jadon. For our first round of questions, this is all for all discussants. Let's begin by setting the stage for today's discussion. Picking up on the talk of Mr. Jadon, how are your respective organizations promoting professionalization among the ranks of procurement practitioners? Let's begin with Attorney Sophia. Ma'am, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the comprehensive discussion of Professor Jadon when he shared to us the map towards professionalization. It's very timely for our country, the Philippines, considering that we are now embarking on this journey. To further build on his points, I'd further like to emphasize that the passage of the new Government Procurement Act in our country is a testament of the genuine commitment of our government in pushing improvement and efficiency in the practice of public procurement in the country. It doesn't only aim to improve transparency, accountability, and efficiency. But most importantly, it lays as a strong foundation for the professionalization of the public procurement practice. For one, as likewise mentioned by Mr. Jadun, the creation of a structured career stream in the country is mandated under our NGPA. So it's important to highlight this one because, as you know, in our current context, the practice of professionalization in the country is being occupied by positions holding generic administrative positions. So we take this as a welcome development because this is something that we can use as a leverage to improve the profile, recognition of our procurement professionals. I wish to also emphasize that one of the ways that we're promoting professionalization in the country is the implementation of the public procurement certification course program, as likewise discussed by Dr. Jadun. Currently, this has 3 competency levels.
Yes, yes.
But this is something that we are also looking forward to improve as we are aligning with the international standards. It's going to be a 4-level competency system that would include the 4th one, which is the expert level. So, thank you.
Okay, we have to do that, ma'am, advanced level. Okay, thank you, ma'am. So how about Sir Bean? You can use your...
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Professor Jadun. You have the present exciting. How about the public procurement practice in Vietnam in my academy? We train public procurement professional by provide training course, both long-term and short-term, providing the practical scientific research project with the lesson learned from other countries to professionalize to the public procurement activity professional. Help them to comply with legal regulation and not violate the regulation. Therefore, we provide human resources to carry out bidding activity professional, not only a few business or organization, but throughout Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bean. Let's hear from Dr. 𝗏𝗧.
Good evening. Good evening. Am I audible?
So you can use the other.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Louder, sir.
Can you hear me?
Quite low. It's very low, sir.
So by the time the batteries are drying out. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Right.
First of all, from all others and on my behalf, I would like to congratulate Government of Philippines to have enacted the procurement law and rules. I can understand very well that this must not have been an easy task. Lot of efforts must have gone into enacting such laws because I have done so myself. So I can very well understand how much time, efforts, energy, and pursuance it takes. Nevertheless, once the act is in place, things will start rolling out in its own manner. As far as the professionalization is concerned in the area of procurement, as under your act, the Section 46 prescribes provisions for professionalization. In my act, it is Section 48, almost on the same line. And in my case, it was the year of 2009-10 when we started thinking about bringing out a law on procurement. At that time, we were working with the World Bank team, and we were designing few new concepts. It took us 3-4 years, and in the year 2012, we enacted procurement law. It's called Rajasthan Public Procurement Transparency in Public Procurement Act and Rules. The basic question and the basic job was over by bringing out a law. But then the real problem starts. You must be, in your all governments, you must be having a large number of workforce which has to work according to the law. And in that workforce, you have got a variety of people. People sitting at the policy level, people sitting heading the department, people sitting heading the offices, and then technical officers, then executive officers. There are multiple layers of officials working in the governments. Now, everybody who is involved in one or other kind of a role in the entire process of procurement of anything, whether it is goods, whether it is works or services, he has to know fundamentals of it. And that's where the problem starts. So I'll tell you a real story. It's a real story in India. Once there was an army battalion which was transferred from one place to another. So once the shifting of the army battalion was over, the commander took the charge, and the outgoing commander was giving him a campus tour. During that inspection tour, the new commander suddenly saw that there is a small area which is kind of a park. And there is a bench, sitting bench, like park bench. And there is a guard, armored guard, standing beside the park bench. So he suddenly asked that, what is that bench and why that guard is standing to guard the bench? So the outgoing commander said that, I don't know the exact reason, but it is happening like that. The guard is for 24 hours, nobody can sit on the bench. It's the guard's responsibility. So he was surprised that what is the reason? Is it in memory of some martyrship, or what exactly could be the reason? The outgoing commander said, I don't know, because when I joined here, it was there. So I had to continue the tradition. So the new commander got curious. He took it responsibility that he has to know the real logic and reason behind it. So he asked the commander who was prior to the outgoing commander posted there. He asked to that commander, and he also got the same answer that, I don't know the reason. But when I joined, this bench was there in the same position and the guard was there, so I had to continue the tradition. So doing this way, this commander contacted 15 previous commanders. You can imagine the number of years he went behind. And he got the same answer that I don't know the exact reason. But when I joined this battalion at this place, it was like that. Finally, the 16th guy who got retired as a brigadier long back, and he was settled in a mountainous area, he contacted him. And you know what? When he was asked by this commander that, sir, do you know why this park bench is still lying there in the with a security guard, armored guard? The brigadier immediately responded, bloody hell, the paint on the bench is still wet. So now you can imagine, you must have seen this thing in your offices as well. People are following things without application of mind. And that is where the professionalization in procurement is very critical. You need to bring things up. You need to know what is the logic behind everything. Why a bid security, why a bid is to be secured. When I was doing some procurement in agriculture, so an horticulturist and this livestock expert, he was to buy some goats for research and breeding purposes. Now, you don't have any shops for the goats. There are no suppliers. Now, how to do the procurement? And when I tried to explain him, he never knew. What are the methods? So these kind of challenges you all must have encountered in your career, because you all are noted professionals with considerable number of years of experience. And that is the challenge I had when I was designing the capacity building program with the support of the expert and high level of expertise team with the World Bank. So we did all kind of research, all kind of international best practices into consideration. But the point was there, how the course should be designed. So we conducted many studies, training need assessment, the MAPS assessment and everything, gap analysis, this and that. But the question was how the course should be designed. Because I have a manpower of almost 96,000 people to be, at least to be trained, fundamental principles of procurement. That's a large number, leaving aside the advanced level of courses. So what I did, I hired a team of professionals from the market, consultants and everybody. And I asked them, you please give me a course book. So as usual, they started writing chapters, this chapter, that chapter in English, beautiful English. And they gave it to me. I said, what I will do with this book? There are hundreds of books in the market. I have a person who is a highly literate person, highly professional person. He is a master's in engineering and this and that, doing road procurement, housing procurement, and IT procurement. But at the same time, I have a village level official as well. He has to also do the procurement with the same act and law. How he can understand by reading this book? So it was a laborious job. So we designed many exercises, and finally we could come out with 3 different type of courses. That is in public procurement, another is contract management, and third one was bringing down a new online course. But that was the biggest challenge. I'll just take half more minutes so that we can continue.
It's okay, sir.
Because I'm here to share my experience, and so that I'm trying to ignite your mind so that you can ask more questions to me.
It's okay, sir.
To all of us, rather. Instead.
You can take the remaining minutes of Dr.
Yeah. So the basic question was designing a course, online course. There are so many courses and capsules available, even Harvard courses, edX courses available. When I was taking my contract law qualification from Harvard, I came to know that contract law is very, very important. People do not know. In procurement, they are procurement professionals, but they do not know the doctrines, something like doctrines of specific performances. What is that? So you have to understand basic things, understand contract law, understand everything, dynamics behind it. how to handle things while doing procurement and while handling contracts. So the entire course was designed in such a way that it should be specific to the local context, but with global outlook. And that course is now on the roll. I also established one public financial management training institute, and that institute, I was also the CEO of the institute, so I could roll it out. The course is still running on a specifically designed platform, which is in fact it is a classic course on public procurement. Anybody, I know that it will be difficult for others because the language issue is that. So we have taken care of both English, like Hindi and English, to make it more convenient to our participants. Okay?
Okay.
Don't show me. I already wrapped it up.
You have to do the wrap up. Thank you so much, Sir 𝗂𝗶. Our second round is for customized questions. Okay, so I'll be asking each our panelists a more tailored question to dig deeper into their expertise and how it connects with today's theme. But of course, sir, it's customized, but you can share, sir, if you have something to share, sir, Professor Jadon. Okay, let's start with Dr. Bean. Dr. Bean, you have had long experience in procurement advisory work, research and training, including teaching procurement at the university level and through short-term courses. What important lessons can you impart to the policymakers and practitioners here on strategizing and planning for procurement professionalization?
Thank you. My Academy of Policy and Development is a unit of Ministry of Finance. We have function of the training expert, public procurement. We supply the bachelor degree, short-term and training course public procurement. Research in public procurement and with proposing the policy-related public procurement managed by Ministry of Finance. At undergraduate level, my IPD is only in situation in Vietnam. Just offer bachelor degree. We offer 4 years with 130 degree credits course in the public procurement program. Graduated when they have when graduates full knowledge and skill to do professional work in public procurement. In short term, we have training short term with certificate. People who have experience, we win the retrain to public skill. In the scientific research, we study lesson and science about public procurement, such as the research and the model of independent administrative agency or sustainable public procurement criteria in Vietnam. Therefore, our experience to study issues, the scientific provide evidence or the lesson learned for policymaker to translate practical issue into the policy. Our training program has provide qualified human resources to carry out public procurement activity that comply with the legal and regulation, are effective, transparent, and accountable. In addition to one very important thing is improve capacity building. Lecture of public procurement. ICT of Professor Jarut has training in the Vietnam. One time we are training for China. Yeah. We also have a strategy professional like public procurement activity issued by Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning and Investment. Now is the Ministry of Finance. we consider follow the strategy focus on short-term training for staff and long-term training for students to improve knowledge for all subjects working in public procurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bien. The next question is for Attorney Abad. You answered a while ago, short of that, but you can elaborate, ma'am. The Philippines recently approved a new procurement law, which include, among others, the need to professionalize public procurement. Can you tell us how your organization, the 𝗔𝗶𝗶 is setting about to achieve this important and, I might say, quite challenging mandate?
Thank you. Thank you for that thought-provoking question. As you have rightly pointed out, it's quite a challenging and daunting task for us to embark on the professionalization of public procurement practice in our country. But we're taking it with a positive mindset, thinking that this is an exciting opportunity for us to elevate procurement into a respected and strategic profession. As we said, it's a recognition that the practice of procurement shall no longer be treated as only an administrative task for compliance, but more of a strategic function. So we're taking this challenge as an opportunity instead. And at the 𝗔𝗶𝗏 we are committed to achieving the goal of professionalization through a comprehensive, multifaceted strategy, which are aligned with what has been shared to us by Dr. Jadun. Actually, we're not reinventing the wheel, but rather we're taking stock of the best practices that we have globally and trying to adjust it in our local context. The first crucial step that we are taking, as I also mentioned earlier, is to push for the creation of a specialized procurement positions. This way, we will be able to have a standard or generic job profiling, which will be in turn considered as a baseline for determining the learning and intervention needs of our practitioners. So after we have profiled and created this position, we will embark on the development of a robust competency framework, as I said, likewise aligned with the international best practices that is 4 levels. So it should be from basic, intermediate, advanced, and expert. This is aligned with our PFM competency framework as well, and ensuring that our public procurement practitioners are competitive not only in the local context, but also internationally. And after we have developed our competency program, we shall embark on the creation of learning pathways and the improvement of our current certification program. The current certification program that we have right now is quite linear. It's progressive. The 3 levels requires a prerequisite completion of the basic levels before you're able to advance. What we're looking right now is also global best practice, wherein you consider a modular or comprehensive approach allowing a ladderized, non-linear progression, such that you're able to take an assessment of the competency of your current practitioners and allow them perhaps to advance by recognizing prior learnings or so. This way, we'll be able to advance our efforts towards professionalization. We likewise would also like to strengthen by developing our code of ethics. Right now, we have a generic one for our government employees or civil servants, but none really for the public procurement professionals. This is something that we are also planning to do. And after we have done all this, we shall also work on leveraging digital technology for our e-learning platforms and collaboration tools, which I believe the most challenging part of the to-do list that we have in the organization. So it's such the list is quite long and really challenging, but we are confident that with this strategic and structured approach, in no time we'll be able to accomplish what we need to do as mandated by our NGPA. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Attorney Abad. That will be a good motivation to government procurement practitioners. Okay, and then I'm sure the GPPBTSO will push on through on that. Do you want some advice, additional comments, sir? Oh, no. Okay. For our third question, it's for Mr. Ashutosh Wape. Sir, what are some of the obstacles the government of Rajasthan is facing in terms of procurement professionalization, and how is your organization addressing them? Aside from your
Challenges.
Yes, sir.
Whatever you do, challenges are already there. So there are plethora of challenges, there have been and there will be. The first challenge is to get the right person. Second challenge, who will train him? Third thing, what to train and how to train. These things have to be overcome with meticulous planning, designing, and getting the best minds at one place. That is the only way. And that is where, wherever you are working, I would suggest that better get a hand-holding support of MDBs. They are always good in that way. World Bank, ADB, they will always help you out because we are sitting at one place in one country. They will reach out to the entire world. They have got an extended approach. So you can have the best knowledge repository with you. Then execution-related challenges there are many. How to bring a right person to a right venue to get it trained. What is his incentive? Why he should be interested to get trained. So all those factors have to be taken into account. Then you need a proper infrastructure. And the key factor, there are two key factors. Number one is the quality of the course or professionalization program, whatever you are designing. And second is who is training them. Yeah. If the quality of the trainer is not good, the entire effort goes waste. So my suggestion is that challenges could be anything. Skill-related challenges are also there. But if you are doing a program on capacity building, whether it is a professional program, always go for intermittent perception studies. That is what we did. In the year 2009-10, when we were preparing to bring the act, we did a perception study that what public has the perception about our procurement. And you will be surprised, the ratio in percentage was just 12%. 12%. Public in general do not consider public procurement as in a very good way. Lot of corruption, lot of manipulations, everything. Public has different perception, whatever perception me and you might have. Then after enacting the law, we again conducted the perception study that what has changed. So our percentage was up. It was up to 46 to 48, or let's say below 50%. So there was an improvement. Public perception was improved. That, okay, the government is doing something good in the direction of good public procurement execution. And when we conducted the entire capacity building program and all these initiatives, the changes in the law, there are many, many more reforms were brought in. And then I took the study. just last year itself, and I was very happy to find the results, it was more than 86%. So whatever we are doing, it is always good to make a measurement that will keep us going in the right direction. So please do not worry about challenges. Challenges will always be there. And my challenges could be different, your challenges could be different. But get a good hand-holding. That is the most important part. We were fortunate to have a very good team in India with the World Bank. So we got a very nice support.
Okay, thank you, sir. So thank you to all our panelists for those valuable insights. Clearly, professionalization is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It requires leadership, investment, policy backing, and most importantly, a vision for change. Now I have questions coming from the audience. Okay. First questions will be for Professor Jadon. How many countries use e-procurement under World Bank Fund? Do you have any ideas, sir? How many countries use e-procurement? I repeat, how many countries use e-procurement under World Bank Fund? You have ideas, sir?
Well, many countries are now working on professionalization of procurement, helped by the World Bank. I give you an example of countries that I am working with. Morocco, Pakistan are two countries that are intending to promote professionalization. But there are also initiatives in the World Bank to produce knowledge academies, repositories of knowledge for procurement. And there is recently an initiative in the Latin American region where the World Bank, recognizing that it's not easy to find consultants to work on projects financed by the bank. They want to establish a professionalization scheme whereby they certify public procurement officers or consultants that they are competent to apply the procurement framework of MDBs, because it's a joint initiative between all the MDBs working in Latin America region, that they are certified to work on World Bank funded projects or Caribbean bank funded projects or Inter-American bank funded projects. If I understood your question, I think this is what the World Bank is doing now, in addition to their traditional work in capacity building, in enhancing professionalism. So the World Bank is doing quite a significant effort across developing countries in terms of supporting programs for professionalization. I forgot to mention, for example, Bangladesh, where in 2001, when I was working in the ILO, we introduced a program for reform, whereby we introduced a new regulation through a consultative process, and after 3 years of measuring the impact of the new regulations, we introduced the law, an act. And it was also with stakeholder participation. I remember in the case of Bangladesh, I, as the team leader from the UN side, was happy to see that the 13th version of the draft law was accepted by the government. It was not the first or the second, so we kept on holding consultation with the stakeholders until the 13th version of the draft law was accepted by the government to be submitted to Parliament. So MDB's assistance in enhancing management of the public procurement function can vary a lot. And I know that, for example, EBRD is financing the master of procurement in Italy. So this is a wide range of activities that development banks are doing to support procurement professionalization.
Okay, thank you, sir. Have another question, and this time for Attorney Abad. Attorney Abad, how can we capacitate auditors given this professionalization to ensure accountability in conflicts? BFM audits as we shift from compliance to value for money. Ma'am, your mic.
Yeah. The capacity building for our auditors in light of the passage of the NGPA is quite a crucial task for us. This is something that we are planning to do so that come the full implementation of the NGPA, we are fully aligned with our auditors from the Commission on Audit in the interpretation of the law. This is something that we are preparing for in the coming months, especially after we have completed the required forms under our implementing rules and regulation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And the third question is for Sir Ashutosh. Sir Ashutosh 𝗶𝗶, yes. Here is your question, sir. Risk management is crucial for effective procurement. What level of risk management competency is needed for a procurement practitioner?
Oh, for a procurement professional, there are multiple types of risks.
Closer mic. Closer mic. Closer, sir.
Oh. As far as risk management is concerned, there are multiple levels and multiple types of risks involved. In my mind, it goes like that. The risk involved is, first of all, if you are getting a person or if a person himself is getting interested to get a professionalization standard in public procurement, whether he intends to be more on academic side or towards execution side, because this is going to make a lot of difference. So you need to address the risk. There are many people who are good in academics, but when it comes to execution, implementation, they face challenges. They may have very good knowledge, but execution is a very different strategy. So that is one of the risks. Second risk is getting the right team at the right place. In every department, every ministry, you need to have good people segregated, selected, and put in place at the right place. That is very important. I can understand in government systems, people are transferred from here and there. So that is also one of the risks involved. So I think with a proper designed HR policy and incentive policy and exposure policy is also very important. So you can mitigate some of the risk.
Oh, thank you, sir. Do we have some questions? Is there any question from the plenary? Please raise your hand. We will accommodate 2 questions from the audience. Is there any question?
Please shoot out questions.
Actually, our panel loves questions.
Otherwise,
yes,
we will consider that we were quite boring.
They They want to be questioned. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for this presentation and for the evolution of the professional mandate and also the efforts that many of the countries are doing in the context of the professionalization. Something that I was wondering in your presentation is that how much technology are you planning or you have been using in order to be more efficient, having more impact in the, when you're reaching out and enhance the capacity of the procurement function? I'm thinking broadly, and not everybody needs to be trained in the same things. If you do a data analysis of your procurement, you will see that some procurement, the majority is going to be common procurement that need to be a specific training. Others are very strategic procurement that requires a different kind of training or professionalization. So my question to you is a general question. How much you rely on data? How much you rely on artificial intelligence, on technology in the work that you are doing or you want to do?
Thank you, sir. Sir Professor Hadon.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, technology has or is in the process of reshaping the procurement profession. I give you a real example. 1992, I was asked by the African Development Bank to refurbish the laboratories and the School of Engineering of the University of Makerere in Uganda. You know, there was a civil war, everything was looted, the university was left with nothing. So the African Development Bank funded 10 million special account units to refurbish the university. So I went there to do the specifications in consultation with the faculty deans. When I left ILO Geneva to come to Uganda, ILO procurement department gave me 2 suitcases of brochures and leaflets. Each suitcase was 30 kilograms of paper, carrying all the leaflets for a chemistry laboratory, for a civil engineering workshop, for a mechanical engineering workshop, for a language laboratory workshop. And they collected for me all options for equipment for every faculty. When I look back at that time, and I had to carry, in addition to my own baggage, 2 suitcases that were full of brochures and leaflets. Now it's enough to have a laptop with internet, and you can access all the manufacturers and can collect and show the deans, depending on the courses that they are teaching, what they have to do. So the internet gave you access to a lot of information which was not foreseen at the time when I was starting to work in procurement. Another fresh development is artificial intelligence. Recently, you know, you could question anything to artificial intelligence and you will get a reasonable answer. My experience with using artificial intelligence is that in almost all cases, I would say, the answer I got was, I would say, very close to being 100% correct. You only had to adapt few things. But artificial intelligence is really a very powerful tool. Of course, we've seen this morning the Korean presentation, South Korean presentation, and the services that are incorporated within the Korean CONEP system is remarkable. So technology can facilitate reporting, can facilitate statistics collection, can facilitate decision making, can identify performance problems, and can also help you to access information of whatever nature is pertinent to procurement. So one cannot underestimate the value of technology, of new technology in the procurement function. I must say it is reshaping the profession. However, having said this, nothing substitutes human intelligence. You still have the human intelligence needed. But imagine how much there is productivity improvement at the level of the procurement officer, how much efficiency gains, because you only come at the last step to review the quality of what was produced by artificial intelligence, what was collected. You always need the human touch at the end, but the productivity and efficiency gains are remarkable. I think that, especially now, when you are doing big projects, when you are investigating performance history of suppliers, of contractors, artificial intelligence is a very powerful tool. I tell you, I was involved recently on a big project where suddenly during the bidding process, one of the bidders in the joint venture merged with another bigger firm. It made me smell a rat, to be suspicious. And through artificial intelligence, I got to the real reason why this merger happened. So, before you had to hire a company, Dun & Bradstreet, or whatever company that is assessing companies, and you pay $1,000 for such a report. Now you get it for free from the artificial intelligence. And I checked it through other journals and found it to be correct. So artificial intelligence is a very powerful tool, in addition, of course, to the opportunities offered by the internet. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Professor Don. Okay, as we've heard today, professionalization is a cornerstone of procurement reform. It empowers practitioners, improves outcomes, and ultimately builds public trust. Today, we've seen a growing recognition that procurement is not just a technical function. It's a strategic pillar of good governance. And as procurement systems become more complex, so must be the capabilities of the people behind them. This panel explored how governments and institutions are professionalizing procurement through structured training, certification, programs, policy reform, and institutional culture shifts. This was made possible by our remarkable speakers, so let's give a big hand to our presenter, Engineer George Sadon, and our remarkable panelists, Dr. Nguyen Devin, Attorney Sophia Yanto Abad, and Mr. 𝗔𝗀𝗶, for generously sharing your time and insights. We are fortunate to have with us today a group of distinguished speakers who bring a wealth of experience from international organizations, national government, and academic institutions. Okay, and of course, thank you for all the audience for your thoughtful engagement. Before we officially close, ma'am, I would like to kindly invite our presenter and panelists to remain on stage for a quick commemorative group photo.
Thank you, Aileen.
Now turn you over to our MC.
Thank you, Dr. Mamino, for leading such a thought-provoking discussion. Let's have the photo up. So panel 3 reminded us that investing in people through training, certification, and capacity building is key to strengthening trust and excellence in public procurement. Are you guys okay? Cool? Yes? All right. Well, basically that wraps up day one of the 2025 East Asia and Pacific International Public Procurement Conference. Clap for yourselves. Good job. Thank you for joining today's great talks on innovation, value for money, and accountability. Before you go, please take a minute to fill out the event evaluation form by scanning the QR code available on your tables. So there's a QR code there. Your feedback means a lot to us. And once you do tap into the QR code, you get a chance to come up with or to produce your certificate of participation for today. Also, if you'd like a copy of the presentations that were shown to you today, you can log on to ippcmanila.gppb.gov.ph. Let me say that again. ippcmanila.gppb.gov.ph for a copy of the slides today. All right, we'll see you back tomorrow, 8:30. Yes? We'll see you guys tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. for more exciting discussions. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay. Take care on your way home or on your way to your hotel rooms. Take care. God bless.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf